In this video, we'll cover what you should expect to see in Year 10 statistics. If you're following along on the test preview sheet, you can use the time tags in the description below to just skip to the question numbers that you need help with. Question 1A is revision. These are how the statistics questions used to be proposed to you in previous years. So I got a head start and I've just written them out in ascending order, so from the lowest to the highest number, just to make it easier to answer these questions. So we'll start with the mode. That's the score that happens most frequently, and if you scan through the list you can see that 36 happens twice and 43 also happens twice. So this question is in fact bimodal. That means that there are two modes, and that's okay. There can be two modes. If there's any more than two, it's said to have no mode. Median is the middle score. So if you have a look at this, there are 11 scores in this list altogether, so you count them through to 11, which means that I'll be hunting for the 6th score, the one in the middle. Now, if you can't work out how to do that, you can source the median score by doing the number of scores, so 11, plus an extra one and divide it by 2. So 12 divided by 2 is the 6th score. So it will be this one in the middle, the 36th score. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Remember, these have to be written in order to find the median. You can't count across here for the 6th score. It must be in ascending order. And then the average is achieved by adding all of these numbers up. So to get the mean, you're going to have to do 20 plus 23 plus 28, etc, 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 all divided by 11, because there are 11 scores altogether. So what you'll end up with is you'll end up with 379 once you've added all these numbers up, divided by 11, which will give you a mean of 34.45. Question 1B, I've done the same thing. I've written all of the scores out from the lowest through to the highest, so in ascending order. I've also counted how many scores there are, so I know that I've got 12 scores to deal with. And now I'm going to go through and solve for mode, median and mean. So the mode is the one that happens most frequently. I can see two 13s there. Pen's not working too well. And I can see that I've got two 21s as well. So this one is also bimodal. Remember, that means if there's any more than two modes, it's said to have no mode, but in this case it's bimodal, it's got two, which is fine. The median score is going to be a little different into the last question. Because we've got 12 scores, I'm going to be hunting for the 6th and 7th score and working out what's halfway in between those two. So to do the median, remember that we are looking for the if you can't work out that it's the 6th and 7th, do 12 plus 1 divided by 2 and you'll get 6.5. So you know that you're looking at the 6th and 7th scores. Okay, so you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's this one and this one. Now you're only allowed to have one median. So to find the median, you need to do halfway between those. So 21 plus 28 divided by 2, and that will give you 24 and a half. So we'll go with 24 and a half as our median. And then our average, remember we need to add all of these scores together. Okay, so the mean, add all the scores together and they'll total to 286. Okay, once you've added all those together, you have to divide them by how many there are so that we're sharing them evenly. And that will give you 23.83, so you'll get 23.83 as your mean. Question 2 is using a frequency distribution table, which is a much better way of dealing with these sorts of numbers than we have done in question 1. So this is how you fill out a cumulative frequency table. The cumulative frequency is a running total of the frequency, if you like. So you bring the 5 over, and then you say 5 plus 3 is 8, and 8 plus 8 is 16, and 16 plus 2 is 18. Now, this number here also happens to be the total of the frequency, so you can drop that in, okay? Now, because you don't have a score, this question is looking at intervals, so it's talking about how many kilometres people drive to school, or to work. So these 5 people drive between 0 and 9 kilometres, these 3 people between 10 and 19. So what we need is we need a midpoint, okay? So that's going to be halfway between those values. So 4.5 is halfway between 0 and 9. And if you're not sure, just add the 2 numbers together and divide by 2. So it'll be 14.5, 24.5, and 35.5. Alright, and then you've got this fx column, and as the name suggests, it's the frequency multiplied by the score, which is why we needed this midpoint column. So we're going to do frequency multiplied by the midpoint, which is going to give us 22.5. So frequency multiplied by the midpoint, so 43.5. 8 times 24, which will give us 196, and 2 times 34.5, which will give us 69. Total those up. Okay, now this is the important bit, and it's a good thing to make a note of. This column is important for helping you find the mean, okay? This one is important for helping you find the mode, and this one is important for helping you find the median. So, if we are going to look for the modal interval, that means the interval that happens the most, okay? So you scan down this list and you can see that 20 to 29 happened 8 times. So that is the mode, or the modal interval. The median interval, what we need to know is how many scores we've got altogether, which is 18. So we are looking for the 9th and 10th. Now, the first 5 scores are held within this, and then the ensuing 3 are held within this, and then the following 8 scores, so the 9th through to the 16th score are held here, and this is where we're looking, okay? Remember, we're looking for the 9th and 10th score, so they are going to happen here. So the median interval will be 20 to 29 also. Okay, and then the average is calculated by the fx divided by the frequency total. Okay, so that's going to be 331 divided by 18, which will give you 18.39. Question 3 looks at box and whisker plots, and these are a useful diagrammatic way of having a look at the most relevant half of the information or data that you've got. So basically it takes the middle half of your data, the most relevant part, and it shows a few other things like the range and something called the upper quartile and lower quartile range. So the whiskers, the ends of the whiskers show the very lowest value through to the very highest value. So if you're after the range for Ben, it will be 80 minus 35. So there's a range of 45. So again, if we do Jill, she has upper range of 70, or highest value of 70, and lowest of 15. So 70 minus 15 gives us 55. So we can see that Jill has a broader range than Ben. And then if we're going for the lower quartile ranges, this is focused on the middle half of the data. So that's this line here. So in Ben's case, it's 40. And in Jill's case, it's 35. The upper quartile range is the other end of the box. So Ben's is 50. And Jill's is 55. The little line within the box is the median. So in Ben's case, this is 45. and in Jill's case it's 50. And the interquartile range is the upper quartile limit minus the lower quartile limit. Okay, so in this case 50 minus 40, which is 10, or it is 55 minus 35, which is 20. Question 4 is just another frequency distribution table, except this time it's arranged horizontally. It looks a bit different, so it sometimes gets confusing. So what we need to do is we need to provide a bit more information. So we need a FX column, a frequency times the score. So the score is the time that these two elite athletes, Mr. Connolly and Mr. McLeod, have got. And so this will just be 31 times 2, which is 62. It will just be 32 times 4, which is 128. And once you've multiplied all of those out, get your calculator, run across and add them up, and get your total of 533. Remember, this will be useful for finding the mean later. Then in the next column, what we might do is we might do the cumulative frequency. Okay, so our cumulative frequency, remember, you bring the 2 down and you go, right, 2 plus 4 is 6, 6 plus 3 is 9, etc., etc. And when you get to the end of that, remember that that is also the total of the frequency column added up. And we'll do the same for Mr. McLeod down here. So we will do frequency multiplied by the score. Okay, so it'll be 31 times nothing, it's nothing. Then we'll have 32 times 2, which is 64. Once you've calculated those, run across and add them all up to get your total, which is going to be 540. And then we'll do a cumulative frequency column for this one as well. So 0 comes down, 0 plus 2 is 2, 2 plus 4 is 6, 12, 16, and 16 plus nothing is 16. Okay, and the total, remember, is also the total of the frequency column over here. So that's important for calculating the mean. Okay, we've got a lot to do in this question. So what I might do is I might just break the video into sections here so we can tackle the different components that we need to find in separate little videos. Let's start with the range. So if we start with the range, I'm just going to keep each of these sums for the separate athletes. Okay, so we'll keep Mr. Connolly over here and we'll keep Mr. McLeod over here. Now the range is the difference in scores. Okay, so in this case it's going to be 36 minus 31, which is going to be 5. So there's going to be a range of 5 seconds. In the case of Mr. McLeod, be careful. He didn't score any 31s and he didn't score any 36s. So his range is going to be 35 minus 32. So the range is only 3 seconds in this case. Next we'll tackle the mode for each of the athletes. So the mode is the score that happens most frequently. So you need to run across the frequency column and look for the highest number. So in this case it's 32 seconds. And in this case it's going to be 34 seconds. The mean is the next one, or the average. So remember that the mean is calculated by taking the total of the FX column and dividing it by the total of the frequency column. So in this case we're going to have 533 divided by 16, which is going to give us 33.31 seconds. In the case of Mr. McLeod, the mean will be 540 divided by 16, which will give us a total of 33.75. So his average. Okay, in this one we're going to find the median scores and the upper and lower quartile scores because they're kind of related to one another. We know them, and I've included the formulas, but I'll explain what they mean. So if we were finding the median score, as in which one to look for here, remember that to find that median score, what we'd have to do is do our total number of scores plus 1 and divide it by 2, okay? And so we know that if that gives us 8.5, we are looking for the 8th and 9th score. So in the same way you can use these formulas to find what the lower quartile scores are going to be. So 16 plus 1 divided by 4. So 4.5. So I know I'm looking for the 4th and 5th score. And find the upper, it's going to be 3 times 16 plus 1 divided by 4, which is going to be 12.5. So I'm looking for the 12th and 13th score. But what that actually means is, let's say that these are our 16 scores, all run out like this. If I divide that exactly in half, that is the median. And then if I divide it up further into quarters, then what I've got is my lower quartile scores, my upper quartile scores, and my median here, okay? So I'm looking for the 4th and 5th score for the lower quartile. I'm looking for the 12th and 13th for the upper quartile, and I'm looking for the 8th and 9th score for my median. So if I duck back up into my data here, I'll go looking for the median first. So I'm running along here, attempting to find the 8th and 9th score, which happens here at 33. So that one's 33. I'm running off the page. My lower quartile, I'm looking for the 4th and 5th. So they are held here, because this holds the 3rd through to the 6th score, so that's 32. The 12th and 13th score are going to happen here and here. So halfway between 34 and 35, so 34 and a half. And then the interquartile range is just the upper minus the lower, so it will be 2.5 seconds. So same deal over here, okay? I'm looking first for the median score, which is going to be the 8th and 9th score. So I come up here and find that it's 34. Off the page again. I'm going for the lower quartile, which is the 4th and 5th, which is here, 33. And I'm looking for the upper, which is the 12th and 13th, which is again going to be here and here, so halfway between 34 and 35, so 34.5. And the interquartile range is upper minus lower, so it will be 1.5. Try and get that to all fit in the page for you. Okay, to graph the efforts of these two great athletes, the first thing we're going to need to do is put a scale on here. Okay, 30. And then we'll start putting in our box and list of plots. So we'll start with Connolly. I like to start by marking the range for my whiskers. So remember the range was 5, so I need the upper and lower most scores. So put in the lower at 31, put in the upper at 36. And these will be the end of my whiskers. The next thing I like to do is the upper and lower quartile ranges. So the lower quartile is 32. The upper is 34.5, and this will form our box. And now we can draw in our whiskers, and then we just need the median of 33, and that is Mr. Connolly. And then to do Mr. McLeod, we'll go for his upper and lower range. So lower range of 32, upper range of 35. They'll form our whiskers. Then I need the lower quartile range, which is 33. The upper quartile range, which is 34.5. That forms our box. I'll join my whiskers. And then I need his median, score of 34. And that's McLeod. And that's a completed box and whisker plot. Okay, question 5 is to draw another box and whisker plot, and it wants you to show the following data. Now this one is trick. You can't show the average on a box and whisker plot, so that's not going to be on there. But the rest of it we can show. So the first thing we need is a good scale. Okay, so we need a scale that's actually going to fit, so we're probably going to have to go up in 2s here. So that it all fits. Okay, I like to start with minimum and maximum so I can get my whiskers in. Okay, so I've got my minimum at 6 and I've got my maximum at 29, and now I'll do my lower quartile, which is at 12, and I'll do my upper quartile, which is at 25. And I can draw the box in now.
Dad, do you have a nail?
Yes, mate. Draw my whiskers in. And then I can show my median of 19 and mark it in right here.
Dad, do you have a nail?
And obviously you can't show the mode on this either. Okay, so I'll just number them up so that it's really obvious which one's which. That's completed, so don't do this, but let's just call this 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, just so that we can name them up for you. So this is the minimum, this is the maximum, this is the upper quartile, this is the lower quartile, and this one is the median. You don't need to put these numbers in, this is just for me to help you explain.